Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. This video is going to be a bonus video for this week because I really wanted to cover the Supreme Court's ending of Biden's eviction moratorium. Now, of course, this did happen August 26th, which is about 4 days ago, so I'm a little bit late in the making of this video, but I still wanted to really make sure that I covered this, that I talked about this. And if you're new here, my name is Arena. I'm a real estate agent in Oregon. On my channel, we talk all things real estate, so if you're interested in that type of content, definitely consider subscribing and joining me weekly for new videos. Okay, now let's just get right into this. I'm gonna start sharing my screen so that you guys can see the articles that I'm looking at. We're just gonna cover a few just so that we are all in the know of what is going on. So this first article that we're going to take a look at here really just covers how many times this moratorium has been actually extended. So originally it ended at midnight on January 1st, 2021, and it was immediately extended to January 31st. Now, after that, President Biden had the CDC extend this federal moratorium through March 31st, right after his inauguration on January 20th. And then the CDC extended the nationwide eviction moratorium on May 29th to June 30th. Then they issued another extension saying this would be its final extension on June 24th, 2021. They extended it through July 31st of 2021. But this was supposed to be the last one. But due to intense pressure from congressional Democrats, the CDC issued yet another extension through October 3rd, 2021 for counties nationwide with substantial and high levels of community transmission of the coronavirus. Okay, so this has been extended numerous times. You know, even when the CDC had said this is our final extension, they actually ended up extending it again. And the reason that we're here today talking about this is, you know, this next sentence right here. On August 26, 2021, the U.S. Supreme Court struck down the latest CDC extension, leaving millions of renters across the country without protection against eviction for non-payment of rent, without sort of protection on the national level. Of course, states and local areas will still, I believe, offer, every state offers different protections for tenants. Some states offer more protections than others, but on a national level, the rent eviction moratorium has finally ended. It has come to an end. And that's really just what we're going to be covering today. Now, before we get into the rest of the articles that I have pulled up here, I really just want to say that, of course, there are so many differing opinions on what's been going on right now. A lot of people that have been saying that this is not right, that leaving tenants without protections is not okay. And, you know, you have another group of people, especially landlords, that are hailing this as a victory, that are really happy that finally this has come to an end. And I think, of course, there's validity on both sides, but really the issue is that during this eviction moratorium, this is not debt forgiveness. This does not mean that you don't have to make these payments ever, you're fine, they're just gonna get taken care of magically somehow. These payments still need to be made. This rent eviction moratorium really just meant that tenants could not be evicted. They could not be issued an eviction notice during this period of time. So it really bought them some time to kind of figure out their financial situation, if they were unemployed, to obtain another job. So it was just buying them time. So essentially, a lot of people have been saying, there's been the argument that we're kicking the can down the road, that eventually this rent eviction moratorium is going to have to end, and the longer we postpone it, the worse it's going to get, because people eventually are going to have to make their payments, and if they can't, they will be evicted. It's only, you know, the question is really just when is that going to happen? And it's never a convenient time. There's never a convenient time to evict a tenant. It's a tragic and terrible situation that we've gotten ourselves into, and I can't even imagine what it's like to be a tenant right now, to have trouble paying for your rent, and to face this impending eviction that's coming. I can't even imagine. But I really think that we have to look at the other side of this. A majority of landlords in the United States are mom and pop landlords. I've talked about this before on the channel. That means that these are people that are just regular people that have decided to have just a few rental properties to bring in some extra income. This is something that they're doing to help out their families. These aren't like huge mega millionaire landlords. A lot of mom and pop landlords have been really struggling during this time as well, because if the tenant is not making their payments, That means the landlord has to somehow scrape together the funds to make those payments. And when you have multiple tenants that are not able to pay, now you are finding yourself in a crisis yourself, because not only do you have to pay for your primary residence, now you have to figure out what to do with all of these other mortgages that you have. I really think we need to be considering both sides in this situation. It's equally difficult and terrible for both landlords and tenants right now. Everybody is experiencing hardship through this situation. There's no easy way to figure this out, it seems. But you know, we have this to deal with. It's the eviction moratorium has ended, and we have to kind of figure out where to go from here. Okay, let's actually move on to some of these other articles that I have here. Let me record my screen again. So this is talking about New York specifically. A little bit further down in the article, they outline some rent assistance that you can apply for in New York to help people out through this national eviction moratorium end. But they do cover the situation at large in the beginning of the article. So let's see here. So like I said, the Supreme Court ruled on Thursday that a federal eviction moratorium was unlawful. The unsigned majority decision found that the CDC had overstepped its authority when it extended an eviction moratorium earlier this month to last until the beginning of October in regions with substantial or high levels of community transmission of COVID-19, including NYC. The Supreme Court's decision, which drew dissent of the 3 liberal justices, said any new eviction policy should come from Congress directly. We see here a statement from Representative Cori Bush. He says, "Tonight, the Supreme Court failed to protect the 11 million households across our country from violent eviction in the middle of a deadly global pandemic." Of course, we can't minimize how devastating this is to a lot of tenants across the country, but there are also households, landlords' households, that are going through a lot of difficulty because of the rent eviction moratorium, because we're allowing it to continue, or we were allowing it to continue. You know, there's 2 sides to this. That's really what I want to say, is it's tough on the tenants, but if we keep this eviction moratorium going, it's going to be tough on other households too. It's going to be tough on these mom and pop landlords that simply cannot pay for multiple mortgages. So let's keep reading here. The previous federal ban on evictions was enacted as unemployment skyrocketed during the pandemic and public health officials sought to minimize household movements during shelter-in-place orders. Absolutely, totally makes sense. So it says here, this decision could affect roughly 3.5 million people in the United States who said they faced eviction in the next 2 months. We have Governor of New York saying, Kathy Hochul, saying, "I am very disappointed in the Supreme Court's appalling and insensitive ruling that eliminates a key line of defense for tenants facing housing insecurity during the ongoing pandemic." So of course, we're seeing people that are not happy with the Supreme Court's decision to end the eviction moratorium, but you know, I don't know, you guys, let me know in the comments if I'm completely wrong and out of left field for this, but I feel that we're just delaying what's going to eventually happen anyway. It's tough to speak on this because these are people's lives, but like I said earlier on, this is not debt forgiveness. This eviction moratorium does not mean that these tenants don't owe these payments anymore. They are going to have to pay at the end of the eviction moratorium, whenever that is. It's happening now, but they're going to have to make these payments, and if they can't make these payments, they're going to have to be evicted. This is just something that has to happen, unfortunately, because like I said, especially in the case of mom and pop landlords, now these people have multiple mortgages and they can't make these payments, and so they're going to have those homes go into foreclosure because they can't pay and the tenants can't pay, and it's a whole huge mess. And maybe I'm wrong, let me know in the comments down below, but I feel like if we continue to extend this, it's just going to be an even bigger mess. People are going to end up owing more money than they owe right now, because of course with every month your payments accrue, your payments add up, and by the end of the moratorium, if it weren't now, if it were down the road, if it was further down the road, you would owe way more money. I don't know. Let me know in the comments down below. It's a very difficult situation, absolutely. Okay, let's take a look at this next article here. The federal eviction ban, which protected millions of struggling renters while frustrating landlords across the country, has ended for the second time in just 4 weeks. Because remember, it was supposed to end for the last time on July 31st, and then they extended it again to October, and then the Supreme Court said, nope, the CDC It's not constitutional for the CDC to do this. So let's see here. On Thursday, the Supreme Court blocked the latest eviction moratorium, writing an unsigned 8-page opinion. They say Congress was on notice that a further extension would almost surely require new legislation, yet it failed to act in the several weeks leading up to the moratorium's expiration. So the back and forth over what landlords can do in terms of evictions and what renters can expect when they have lost income due to the pandemic has been legally, financially, and emotionally fraught for both groups. And that's what I appreciate about this article, is that they say, hey, this is tough on both groups. This is really hard for households that are tenant households and landlord households. This is hard for everyone. It's terrible. So the end of the federal protection has landlords declaring victory and housing advocates calling it a tragic and avoidable outcome. Is it an avoidable outcome though? Is it avoidable? Because people are going to have to make these payments at some point. So what's going to happen if the rent eviction moratorium ends in October? I don't know. This isn't debt forgiveness. It's important to realize that. So like we had read earlier, the eviction moratorium was put in place last September by the CDC. When it expired at the end of July, there was a strong and vocal reaction from housing advocates and members of Congress that ending the ban before the bulk of the federal government's $46 billion in emergency rental assistance was distributed would undermine the point of the moratorium in the first place. Yes, only $5.1 billion of the $46 billion in emergency rental assistance was distributed up to this point. As we know, days later on August 3rd, the CDC issued a new eviction ban covering areas where COVID infection rates are elevated. It was challenged by landlords and real estate companies, leading to the Supreme Court's ruling on Thursday. If we continue on here, they talk about how renters will need to turn to local protections, and then further down it talks about how landlords are relieved that the moratorium is over. It says here, landlords and property owners, many of whom continue to work with renters to help them get rent relief, have been frustrated that they cannot remove tenants who are unwilling to apply for rental assistance. Further down it says, this illegal order not only injured thousands of mom and pop housing providers, as we had talked about, but undermined the actual policy Congress chose to address the COVID rental market disruptions. It says here, though the moratorium is lifted, it is important to remember that billions in debt remain on renters' records and housing providers' shoulders. It's past time to focus on the most sustainable path forward of full rental assistance funding and streamlined distribution. It's tough to tell how the situation is going to unfold moving forward. Are we going to see a flood of homes on the market? Are we going to see a lot of misplaced tenants? Are we going to see distressed landlords? I mean, all of the above, potentially. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Let's take a look at our final article here by the New York Times. Supreme Court ends Biden's eviction moratorium. This is a photo from a protest in Manhattan in favor of an extension of the federal eviction ban. It says here on this guy's sign, Kavanaugh extend eviction moratorium to June 2022. I suppose the argument is that if it's extended to June 2022, that'll give a little extra time for the rent aid for the 46 billion, I believe it was 46 billion dollars in rent assistance. Let's go back to the CNN article right here. It'll give the time for that 46 billion in emergency rental assistance to be distributed. If we push to June 2022, I don't know. You guys let me know in the comments. Should they have pushed this further down, or is it just gonna create even more problems? Was this a good call to have it end now? I really want to hear from you guys. Okay, so here it covers basically what we've already talked about. The Supreme Court on Thursday rejected the Biden administration's latest moratorium on evictions, ending a political and legal dispute during a public health crisis in which the administration's shifting positions had subjected it to criticism from adversaries and allies alike. So like the previous articles had said, this was an 8-page majority opinion, and the court's 3 liberal justices dissented. We have already talked about that. This decision puts hundreds of thousands of tenants at risk, while the administration struggles to speed the flow of billions of dollars in federal funding to people who are behind in rent because of the coronavirus pandemic. So this is what we already talked about. Only 5.1 billion of the 46.5 billion in aid had been dispersed by the end of July, according to figures released on Wednesday. So this majority opinion, which was unsigned, said that the CDC had exceeded its authority. Basically, the Supreme Court was saying, hey, to the CDC, you guys do not have the authority that you think you do, and this ends now. Essentially, that's what happened. Continuing on, the Supreme Court had said if a federally imposed eviction moratorium is to continue, Congress must specifically authorize it. Is it possible that the eviction moratorium will be reinstated? I don't know. Congress must specifically authorize it. It's exactly what the Supreme Court had said. So I really just wanted to cover that news with you today. I'm sure you've already heard about it, but if you haven't, that is what happened. August 26th, the Supreme Court said no more. It ended the rent eviction moratorium. And really, you guys, I truly want to hear from you in the comments down below, because I myself am feeling a little bit torn. I'm not even sure, because it is such a difficult situation. Was this a good decision? What are the repercussions that we're going to see moving forward? What does this mean for the housing market moving forward? Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments down below. Really, my heart goes out to everybody that is experiencing hardship during this time. I think if landlords are able to work with their tenants, if both parties are cooperative, working towards rental assistance, understanding that they can help each other out, maybe if tenants can figure out an arrangement where they can at least partially cover their rent, because like I said, a lot of mom and pop landlords are struggling right now. I think if an arrangement like that is able to be made, that is absolutely wonderful. Anything that we can do to keep people in, in the homes that they're living in, because it's a difficult situation. So anyways, I'm gonna end it here today for today. Hopefully this was some useful information. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments, and I will be back on Thursday with a regularly scheduled video for the week. All right, bye you guys.